Joining us now, CNN senior military analyst, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavridis. It's great to have you with us as always, sir. You're also, of course, a partner at the Carlyle Group, a global investment firm, and the author of The Admiral's Bookshelf. Coming off of what we just saw from Will there, are you concerned, or should I say, how concerned are you that China is, in fact, more emboldened in this moment?
I'm very concerned. I've always said what we want to do with this U.S.-China relationship, Erica, we kind of want to bend it. We want to get a better sense of trade. We want to get them to back off on cybersecurity intrusions. We don't want them to invade Taiwan. We don't want them to claim the South China Sea. We want to bend that relationship. I think we're dangerously close to really breaking it. And if we break it and we decouple economically, exactly as you saw in that last set of tape, China will start to feel, well, we don't have anything really to lose here. And then Taiwan does come into play. So I think it is time for both sides to kind of de-escalate. And I don't think it really matters who picks up the phone first. Let's kind of set that aside. What we want to avoid is a breakout of real hostilities, either over Taiwan or in the South China Sea. And the events of the last couple of weeks, the tariff war, are getting us closer.
Well, to that point, I was also struck this week when we learned that the U.S. had actually shifted a Patriot battalion from the Indo-Pacific to the Middle East, because it raises questions, frankly, about what American priorities are toward Taiwan and the region. What do you make of that?
Well, first and foremost, our Navy, our Pacific Fleet, and you showed Admiral Paparo a few moments ago, the commander of that, as well as other joint forces, has enormous capability. So I'm not overly concerned about a single Patriot battery going or a destroyer going back and forth. I think the U.S. has been quite clear that the Pacific is the zone in which we're very focused going forward. There'll be some tactical shifts back and forth, Erica, but here's what you want to watch. You want to watch whether or not those carrier strike groups get bogged down in the Middle East, as they are at the moment, attacking the Houthis. That provides an opening for China. That's worrisome. Don't worry about a Patriot battery. Watch those carrier strike groups.
So if China were to move on Taiwan, what do you think the U.S. response would be at this point?
Well, our stated policy is something called strategic ambiguity, which means that we may come to the defense of Taiwan or we may not. It kind of depends on the decision that comes out of the White House. A key factor will be TSMC, will be the global microchip factories that are so important, those fabs as they're called there. Terrific that ultimately they'll build them here in the U.S. That's going to be a decade-long project. I think ultimately we would fight to defend Taiwan, but of course that's a decision for the president.
Ukrainian intelligence this week says that they identified more than 150 Chinese citizens who were fighting for Russia. Russia today calls those claims a, quote, complete untruth. China, for its part, has suggested that the citizens were there fighting in their private capacity. China isn't exactly a neutral party, though, when we look at this.
China is drawing closer and closer to Russia day by day, month by month, year by year. Now, having said that, it's North Korea that is flooding their troops officially. 12,000, 15,000 troops have been sent there. As I read those stories and see a handful of Chinese citizens captured, maybe it is 150, I suspect those are, in fact, some level of mercenaries, probably a few special forces of China mixed in who are there observing the conflict, learning about it, potentially preparing to participate. I'm more concerned about North Korean troops who are there in the thousands than I am at the moment for a handful of Chinese.
When we look at where things stand in terms of the war in Ukraine, you had U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff back in Russia on Friday, where he met with Vladimir Putin. The two met behind closed doors for more than 4 hours. That's according to Russian state media. What do you read into that? What do you think Ukraine should take away from that?
I think that Special Envoy Witkoff, who, by the way, is also leading the negotiations with Iran. This is a man with a pretty big portfolio. I wish him well in these missions. I think that he is taking the president's guidance to try and convince Russia to accept a ceasefire. Thus far, the Ukrainians have accepted the rough outline of a ceasefire that the U.S. has put forward. Putin, not so much. Putin is kind of playing rope-a-dope with us. I hope that Steve Witkoff can continue to put pressure on Russia, because if we can't pressure Russia to the table, we are not going to get to a ceasefire this year.
As you note, Steve Witkoff, a very busy man. We did have those indirect talks, negotiations today in Oman between Iran and the U.S. Another meeting set for next week. How are you feeling about these negotiations in this moment?
I'm feeling good as follows. You know, life is compared to what? And compared to 6-8 months ago, when we were talking about could we end up in a regional war between Iran and Israel that almost certainly would have dragged the United States into it, we're in a much better place now because the Israelis have crushed the Iranian proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, as well as the Iranian, and this is key, the Iranian air defense systems. So Iran is in a very weak negotiating position. That's why they're willing to come to the table. I think that, as Winston Churchill said roughly, talk, talk, talk is better than war, war, war. I think that's kind of where we are right now. And I take it as a positive that Steve Witkoff, who is racking up the frequent flyer miles, will be going evidently back to Oman. I sure hope, this is a serious comment, I sure hope he is being well staffed by professional diplomats, senior military officers. These are crucial negotiations he's undertaking. You need real expertise to do that. The administration needs to staff him up very seriously in all of these interactions.
Yeah, absolutely. You would certainly need that if you were handling one, which is a lot on your plate. But when you're dealing with multiple at the same time, even more important. Admiral, always appreciate your insight and your expertise. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica.